Small Steps Chapter 2, Paralyzed from the Neck Down. My mouth felt full of sawdust, my lips stuck together in the corners. As I opened my eyes, I saw a glass of ice water on the table beside my bed. It was exactly what I needed, but when I tried to reach the water, my right arm did not move. I tried again. Nothing happened. I tried with my left arm. Nothing. I tried to bend my knees so I could roll on my side, but my legs were too long, stiff and unmoving. I was too weak to even lift my head off the pillow. "Help!" A nurse ran in. "I can't reach the water," I said. "There's something wrong with my hands. I'm thirsty, but when I try to get the glass..." "Hush," she said. She lifted the glass and sipped a straw between my lips. "There you are. Have your drink." I only took a sip. "What's wrong with my arms and legs?" I asked. "Why can't I move?" "You have polio," she said, as if that explained everything. "But I could move before I fell asleep. I walked in here, I had polio then, and I could still move." "Don't try to talk. Save your energy." She held the straw to my lips again, and I drank the glass of water. "I'll be right back," she said when I finished. She returned quickly with the doctor. While he examined me, the nurse held a clipboard and made notes. "Move your right hand," the doctor said. I tried. My hand did not move. "Try to wiggle your fingers." My fingers lay like an empty glove. He put his hand around my wrist and lifted my arm a foot off the bed. "Hold your arm in the air while I let go," he said. I could feel his hand on my wrist, but when he let go, my arm flopped down. I felt like the Raggedy Ann doll I'd left on my bed at home. He pulled back the sheet. I wore a short hospital gown rather than my own pajamas. I did not remember putting it on, and I wondered who had undressed me. "Try to lift your left leg." I closed my eyes and concentrated. My leg remained on the bed. "Now try to lift your right leg." My right leg stayed where it was. "Can you wiggle your toes?" I could not. Each time the doctor asked me to move a part of my body and I could not move it, my terror increased. I could talk, I could open and close my eyes, and I could turn my head from side to side on my pillow, but otherwise, I could not move at all. The doctor ran a wooden tongue depressor up the bottoms of my feet. I wanted to kick it away, but my feet wouldn't budge. He placed his hand on my ribs. "Intercostal expansion is poor," he said. I felt as if I needed a translator. "What does that mean?" I asked. "The muscles which expand the rib cage when you breathe are weak," the nurse explained. The doctor said, "Diagnosis is acute anterior poliomyelitis. The patient is paralyzed from the neck down." I did not need a translator for his last sentence. The doctor left, saying he would return in an hour to check me. "We'll keep you comfortable," the nurse said, "and I'll tell your parents about the paralysis." "Are they here?" I asked. "I want to see them." "I'm sorry," she said. "You're in isolation. No visitors are allowed." She started for the door, turned, and added, "We can't risk spreading this disease." She left me alone with my terror. "Don't think about being paralyzed," I told myself. But how could I think of anything else? The nurse had forgotten to pull the sheet back up, and the skimpy hospital gown did not even reach my knees. I wanted to cover myself, but I couldn't. Feeling vulnerable and exposed, I grew more panicky. What if the hospital caught fire? How would I get out? The doctor's words played over and over in my mind like a broken record. The patient is paralyzed from the neck down. The patient is paralyzed from the neck down. I wanted Mother and Dad. I wanted to be well again. I wanted to go home. When the doctor returned an hour later, I felt short of breath. "The patient's nostrils are flaring," he said to the nurse. I wondered if he was describing me or a horse. For 2 days, the fever stayed at 102, and it became increasingly difficult to breathe. Mostly I slept, waking often because of muscle spasms or because my back and neck ached so badly. A nurse gently massaged my shoulders, back, and legs, which helped temporarily. I was given aspirin for the pain. My voice developed a nasal twang. I sounded like a bad tape recording of myself. The nurse told me that my parents sent their love, and they were waiting nearby and wanted to see me, but it was against the hospital rules. I thought the rules were foolish. Mother and Dad had already been exposed to me at home and in the car when they drove me to the hospital, so why couldn't they visit me now? Doctors and nurses checked me frequently and urged me to drink something. I drank water, but it became harder and harder to swallow. I wanted only to be left alone so I could sleep. When I slept, it did not hurt. On my 3rd day at the sheltering arms, the doctor said, "The patient may need a respirator." "University Hospital?" the nurse said. The doctor nodded. "I'll arrange for an ambulance," the nurse said. That conversation got my attention, and I roused myself enough to ask, "What's happening?" The doctor put his hand on my shoulder. "There is more than one kind of polio," he said. One is spinal polio. It's the most common type and causes paralysis in the patient's arms and legs. That's what I have, I asked. That's why I can't move? Yes, you have spinal polio. Another kind of polio is respiratory. It causes difficulty in breathing. I was acutely aware of how hard it was for me to breathe. Was he telling me I had 2 kinds of polio? Because you have respiratory polio too, he said, we're transferring you to the University of Minnesota Hospital. We're afraid your lungs may not continue to function on their own. What was he saying? If my lungs quit working, I would stop breathing. And if I stopped breathing, I would die. Is that what the doctor meant? That I was going to die? I desperately wanted my parents. The doctor continued. The Sheltering Arms is a rehabilitation center for polio patients who are trying to regain the use of their muscles. It is not equipped to deal with cases as critical as yours. University Hospital has respirators, and I want you to be near one. If your lungs can't function on their own, the respirator will help. It will breathe for you. I didn't know what a respirator was, but if it would help me breathe, it must be okay. At least it seemed as I was not going to die right on the spot. You'll be taken by ambulance to University Hospital, he continued. I hope you'll be back at the Sheltering Arms soon. I said nothing. I had not wanted to come to the Sheltering Arms in the first place. Why would I be in any hurry to return? This move was bad news. It meant I was so sick that I needed a hospital with more emergency facilities than the Sheltering Arms had. I could not sit up. I could not move my arms or legs. It was hard to breathe, and I was burning with fever, and I was far more frightened than I had ever been in my entire life. I not only had polio, I had 2 kinds of polio, spinal and respiratory. I'll call your parents, the doctor said softly, patting my arm. They can meet you at University Hospital. I was transferred from the bed to a gurney and wheeled out the door where the ambulance waited. The cool outdoor air brought me out of the feverish stupor. I was surprised to see that it was dark out. I had lost all track of time. This is backward, I thought. I walked into the hospital by myself, and now 3 days later I can't move at all. Hospitals are supposed to make you get better, not worse. While the attendants opened the ambulance doors and prepared to load me in, I heard a buzzing sound. A mosquito was flying around my head. Zzz, zzz. I turned my face from side to side, hoping to discourage it from landing on me. But the buzzing grew louder and then abruptly stopped. I could not swat the mosquito or brush it away, and it bit me on the cheek. As we drove through the streets of Minneapolis, people in cars looked curiously in the ambulance window. I longed to pull the blanket up over my head, but I could not move my hands. Instead, I shut my eyes and pretended I was dead. That seemed a fine joke on those who stared, and gave me great satisfaction. With my eyes shut, pretending to be dead, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a different hospital bed. Where are my parents? I asked the nurse. They're in the isolation ward. No visitors are allowed. But the doctor at the Sheltering Arms called them. He told me they would meet me here. She glanced at my chart. They were here when you were admitted, she said. They signed the papers. Why didn't someone wake me? Angry tears filled my eyes. I had slept through my chance to see my parents. No one except the doctors and nurses could come in my room. They wore masks, gowns, and gloves that were sterilized or destroyed after they cared for me. The next day, I had another spinal tap. That afternoon, a new doctor stood beside my bed. There's more than one kind of polio, he said. I opened my mouth to interrupt and tell him I already knew about it, but before I could say anything, he said, the least common kind is called bulbar polio. Bulbar? That was a new word. I braced myself for more bad news. Bulbar is the most serious form of polio, he continued. Worse than spinal or respiratory? I didn't see how that was possible. What could be worse than being paralyzed from the neck down and unable to breathe properly? Bulbar polio impairs the patient's ability to talk or swallow. I whispered my question. Do I have bulbar polio? I knew the answer. Why else would he be explaining this? But I had to ask. His answer was simple and direct. Yes. I could think of nothing to say. I had 3 kinds of polio. There's a call button next to your hand, he said, indicating the cord with a button at the end that lay on my bed. Then he glanced at my chart. You can't use it, can you? I tried to push the button just in case I'd had a miraculous cure in the last 5 minutes, but my fingers remained where they were. No. If you can't swallow and start to choke, yell for a nurse. There's always someone nearby. His words, intended to reassure me, filled me with panic. If I was choking, how could I call for a nurse? Stay tuned for Chapter 3.